Get the microphone back on here. I assume you can still hear me.
Yes, yes.
All right, good. All right. I've got a different cup this morning.
Oh,
Get this.
good. 大卫老师说他今天拿了不同的茶杯来喝茶，水杯。
Okay. I think I'm going. What I would like to do first. So let's just say first. I'm going to say, Yimin Hao. Hello, everyone. And I want to start off by looking at the questions, and then we will come back to the material. We had a couple of questions.
我们先来看一下问题，然后我们再来看今天新的讲义。
And these are good questions. The first one is, how should we interpret if there are two planets which have different characters, conjunct, or have major aspects with the ascendant or the midheaven?
第一个问题是一个非常好的问题，我们要怎么样解读有两颗行星，它们的性质很不一样的行星形成合相，而且这个合相和上升点或者中天形成了主要的相位。
For example, Jupiter conjunct Saturn and conjunct the ascendant. We'll start with that one. Or Venus conjunct Mars and conjunct the ascendant. So let's take these. We'll start with Jupiter conjunct Saturn and conjunct ascendant.
比如木星合相土星合相上升点，或者是金星合相火星合相上升点。我们从第一个例子开始吧。
Now, most likely, this would be in the sign of Libra. I'm sure that that's what Mark was referring to.
那么我想，大概你在说这个上升点是天秤座，我想这是 Mark 所指的。
However, we can look at different signs too, but let's just start first with the nature of the planets. Jupiter and Saturn together, whenever, and this is the basic rule when it comes to conjunctions. One planet does not cancel out the other one.
那么，当我们合相的时候，看到一个合相的时候，最基本的一个原则是，一个行星能量不会取消到另外一个行星的能量。
They combine their energy. They combine the power.
他们把能量和力量联合在了一起。
And remember, with every conjunction, there's a kind of assertiveness of energy.
要记得，任何这种合相都是有一种这种能量的就表达，更确切的表达出来。
So, Jupiter has to do with what we believe in. It's the strength of our beliefs.
那么木星和我们的信念相关，是我们信念的力量。
When we are involved with something that we believe in, when we are doing something that we believe in, we feel more joy, we feel more motivated, we feel more positive.
当我们去做我们相信的东西的时候，我们就会感到更加快乐，我们就会内心感到更加积极。
Saturn has to do with our sense of responsibility, what's important to us in terms of duty, obligation, achievement, accomplishment.
木星和我们的责任感相关，我们成就了什么相关。
And so when these two
土星
planets
和我们责任感和 I'm sorry, okay.
Sure. And so when these two planets are together, you have someone who is both motivated by their belief in whatever sign it is, and wants to make a commitment to work hard to achieve or accomplish what they believe in.
那么当任何时候他看到他们俩合在一起，那么这个人呢，他是非常的相信，就是他所相信这个东西，而且希望能够去成就他所相信的这个东西。
Now, if these two planets are conjunct the ascendant, this dynamic, and I'm going to describe it, but this dynamic of Jupiter and Saturn is going to show in their face, in their body, in their appearance.
如果这两个行星是合相在上升点，这样一种动力就会表达在他们的脸上、他们的身体语言上、他们的外表上。
Okay. First, I'll give you the example with just Jupiter and Saturn conjunct the ascendant in any sign, and then I'll put it in Libra.
我首先是跟你们解读一下木星和土星合相上升点在任何星座，然后呢，我们会再把天秤座这个星座带入。
Okay. In any sign, you're going to see sometimes the outgoingness of Jupiter and sometimes the seriousness and caution of Saturn. Both of these energies are going to be part of this individual's personality.
那么不论在哪个星座，你有时候可以看到木星的这个积极性，它的乐观性；那有时候你会看到土星的严肃性。那么这两种能量都在那里，你都能看到。
So sometimes optimistic, outgoing, other times serious, cautious.
所以有些时候它非常乐观，非常的外向；那么另外一些时候呢，就又非常的严肃，非常的谨慎。
Even their body may reflect this. Sometimes gain a little weight. Other times go through a lean period. A little bit of fluctuation. Not a lot, but just a little.
那么他们的身体也会反映出来，比方有时候好像是有一点点胖，那又隔一段时间呢，他又变得有一点点瘦，就是说都是有一点点，不会很多。
I understand this really well. I have both Jupiter and Saturn, not conjunct, but aspecting my ascendant. I have Saturn square my ascendant and Jupiter sextile my ascendant.
我很理解这样一个组合，因为我的木星和土星都和我上升点形成相位，木星和我上升点成6分相，土星成4分相。
And there have been fluctuations with weight, with body type, times of being very lean, and skinny even, times of being mid-size, and as a young boy, even chubby. So there's been this Jupiter-Saturn fluctuation.
我的体重也会是有时候在这个有时候比较重，有时候又很瘦的两者这之间波动。我的小时候是胖嘟嘟的一个男孩，然后后来呢我又变得很瘦，甚至有一些皮包骨头。
Now, suppose we put Jupiter and Saturn, which is going to be the case for your generation, for many of you, in Libra, also on the ascendant.
我们假设把木星和土星放在天秤座上升点上，你们中大部分人都是有这样的，可能是有这样的木土。
Here we have the principles of Libra that are going to express themselves in the personality.
那么这时候天秤座的这样一个原则就会在这个人格的层面上表现出木星和土星的能量。
Libra is all about building relationships.
天秤座就是有关于他们就是想要建立关系。
Any Libra rising person, if they have no Saturn, Jupiter aspects to the ascendant, but any Libra rising person tends to be concerned about others and asserts themselves in relationships.
任何天秤座的人，他们都希望能够在关系中，他们比较能够为他人着想，同时呢，又能够在主动的去建立关系。
But if you add Jupiter and Saturn to this Libra equation, it becomes very interesting. This is someone who is very serious about fair play, cooperation.
那么，但是你如果把木土放入这个方程式呢，就变得很有趣。这个人对于那种公平的游戏，对于合作，他会非常非常的认真。
And this is someone who believes in fair play and cooperation.
而且他非常相信合作和公平的游戏，这是他的信念。
Such a person can be described as dedicated to the principles of fairness.
那这个人呢，我们可以描述他是致力于这个公平的原则的这样一个人。
Such a person might say, I have dedicated myself to the principles of fairness.
这个人可能说，我把自己都奉献于公平的这样一个原则了。
And so building relationships would mean everything to this individual.
所以建立关系对这个人就意味着一切。
And when relationships were troubled or difficult or disappointing, this could be very frustrating for this individual.
当这个关系比较困难或者是很有挫折，那么这个人呢就会感觉到非常沮丧，非常挫败。
And yet, along with their frustration could also be the hope, Jupiter, see, the hope, encouragement that things will somehow work out.
虽然说他们有这样的挫败感，那么但是他们内心还是会有一丝希望，这个希望就是最后这个事能行得通。
In English, we have a statement, we have a phrase called cautiously optimistic. Do you have that in Chinese?
Yes. 在英文我们有这样一种表达，就是谨慎乐观。
Okay, great. So that's what this means.
所以这就是这个意思。
But what I want you to see is how I combined this combination here. It looks like we just got posted some very interesting information. Who posted this? Oh, this is from Mark. Is this right? Great, Mark. Okay.
Oh.
So Mark just posted.
She just posted the Chinese here.
Oh, good. Excellent. Thank you. That's great. Okay. Now, when it comes to this principle, the same thing's going to be true with Venus and Mars.
那么这种准则也符合这个，我们也可以带着这种准则来看一下金星和火星。
Part of what you're learning how to do as you're becoming a more advanced student, as you're on an intermediate level of astrology, is you're learning to think both logically and creatively.
那么现在你们是学中阶的学生，那么你们要既有逻辑性的思考，也必须有创造性的思考。
Meaning, you're learning how to apply both logic and creativity to the astrological symbols.
也就是说，你们必须把逻辑和创造性都运用在这些占星的象征符号上。
Here, I would say that the key words to consider with any conjunction, number one would be the word both, meaning both energies are active.
那么我想，这个合相的一个关键词是两者都，就比如说这两个能量都非常的活跃。
And you want to use a linking word, the word and. I don't know how that translates in Chinese exactly.
你要用这个和这个词。
For example, with Venus and Mars conjunct the ascendant, this person is both kind and self-motivated.
那么，比如说金星和火星，这个人既和善又非常的是一个自我激励的人。
They can be both sweet and assertive.
他们既非常的甜蜜， 同时呢，他们又能非常坚定地表达自己的立场。
So you see, we're combining the charm of Venus with the assertiveness of Mars.
所以说，我们就把金星的这个魅力和火星的立场坚定这一点合了。
And by the way, a person with a Venus-Mars conjunction on the ascendant could be quite an amorous individual.
那么随便说一下，这个金火合相在上升点的这个人，可能是一个非常充满爱意的人。
This would be true for male or female.
就是可能男性和女性都会有这样的可能性。
Okay. All right. So you can see, without me going through all of the different combinations, how to logically and creatively consider these energies. They work together. See.
所以说，你可以看我不用把这个所有的这些组合都告诉你们，就是这两股能量会组合在一起。刚才那个就是说这个人是很有金火合相，他是可能是就是很多情的，就是充满爱意的。
So this, right.
很多情吧。
Right. So the same principle would be true about Mars and Saturn. You would have someone who can be assertive, but who is also cautious.
那么
And both of those things would show up. You know, they might be a very self-disciplined athlete, for example.
那么火星和土星合在一起也是有这样的含义，他们可能是一个非常自律的运动员，他既非常的很坚定，同时呢他又很自律。
And tell me this, Felicia, what are some of the students, because I see a little bit of commentary going on. What is some of the commentary about? Does it pertain to this issue of the combinations?
No, they're just chatting. Yes, chatting about that, but not the question.
Okay, good. And then I see that Lu Xin had a question, I think.
Because just now you say are all the positive possibility. What are the negative possibility?
The negative possibilities anytime with Saturn is a failure, frustration, disappointment. You know, that's normal.
土星的这个负面特质就是感觉到失败，failure and 悲观。
Failure, frustration, disappointment.
就是感觉到失望，感觉到挫败感。
It's always the downside for Saturn.
这就是土星的它的负面的含义。
Sometimes, and of course, hard work and obstacles, these are typical for Saturn in the negative sense. It's part of the stress and pressure of Saturn.
就是土星给我们带来压力。
Suppose, for example, it was the first combination when we were talking about Jupiter and Saturn in Libra. Suppose this individual was involved in negotiating an important contract.
我们讲，比如说这个木土合相的在天秤座的人，他在去跟别人协商一个合同。
And they had worked very hard to come up with an agreement, a contract that would please both sides.
他们非常辛苦的努力，最终达成了这个协议。这个协议他们觉得应该可以让双方都能满意。
And then one side walks away from the agreement and says, "I don't like it. I'm not going to do it."
那么结果呢？有一方结果就是他们离开了这个谈判，他们说我不喜欢这个协议，我不干。
This individual would be with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra, would be very unhappy about that. Very, very frustrated.
这个人呢，他就会非常非常的不开心，挫败感非常非常的大。
They would experience that as a personal failure, almost a big, see Jupiter, Saturn, a big failure.
那么他就会把它当做一个非常巨大的失败，这是木星，就是说，而且会当成一个个人的失败。
And let's think about what would be the negative side of Venus-Mars conjunction on the ascendant.
那么金火的这个合相呢，它的负面特质可能是什么呢？
If this person, let's say, grew up in an environment or had as an example with their father or with their mother, either one, an example of behavior in social situations that was inappropriate, then they might, in the negative sense, sometimes behave inappropriately in their own social life.
那么，假如说这个人他从小的成长环境或者他父母会做了一个不好的榜样，就是在社交的生活
Hey,
中。
Ella, hold on one second. David, when you come to say goodbye, Ella can come say goodbye.
他们俩就是说这个人呢，可能是他的父母给这个孩子做了不好的榜样，那他长大以后呢，他也可能在社交生活中有不当的举止。
What were you saying just then?
And translate.
You translated what I said to
I didn't. I translate Venus and Mars.
Oh, okay, great. And here's the thing about Venus and Mars. This could mean, for example, that this individual, we have a saying, I don't know what this is in Chinese, but we have a saying, when someone is always on the make. Do you know what that means, Felicia? When someone is always on the make? It's like a playboy or a playgirl.
就是他好像是总是在，就像一个花花公子一样，总是在。
So you said that, playboy or playgirl?
Yes， 就是花花公子，或者是一个比较轻浮的女孩。
In other words, they're acting upon their charm, but it could be inappropriate, and therefore they could experience friction with others, conflict, friction with others because of their inappropriate behavior.
换句话说，他们可能是就是总是想展现自己的魅力，但是呢，这个魅力呢展现呢却是不当的。
Mm-hmm. And so again, this is using your logic and your creativity about what do the planets mean, see?
就是说刚才也提到了，他提到调情，就是用他们的魅力来调情。所以说你们总是，刚才我提到你们要用占星的逻辑，就是这些行星它们有什么样的意思。
So I want you to really, take these symbols and work with them in the way that you hear me describing this.
所以说我希望你们就拿这些象征这些元素、象征符号来把玩，就是刚才老师说的这些，因为每个元素都有很多的意思嘛，你自己去组词就好了。
These are very good questions, and exactly the kind of questions that you should be asking when it comes to the intermediate level.
那么这是很好的问题，也确实是在中阶的时候应该问的问题。
Now, Lorena wants to know how to interpret the Jupiter conjunct Saturn on the midheaven.
Lorena 说，我们怎么样去解读木土合相在中天呢？
And I'm going to answer you with a question.
那么我要问你，用一个问题来回答你。
What is the midheaven about?
中天是什么意思？
The midheaven is about your reputation, your career, your public standing, your professional life.
中天是你的职业、你的公众生活、你的名誉。
Exactly. Things that are seen. Someone with a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra on their midheaven might have Sagittarius rising or possibly Capricorn rising. It depends.
那么这样一个人，如果是他的木土合相的中天，他可能是上升射手或者上升摩羯。
If this person has Sagittarius rising, their personality is more Jupiter. Their personality is more outgoing, enthusiastic, smiling.
如果这个人上升是射手的话，那他们的个性呢更是外向的，一直在微笑的，更乐观的。
So that on the one-to-one level of interaction, you see more Jupiter.
所以说，在你跟他一对一的这样的互动中，你更多的看到是木星。
But if they've got Saturn conjunct Jupiter on the midheaven, they're very, very serious about their reputation, their public life, their career life, strong commitment, very serious.
但是如果是他有木土合相的中天的话呢，他对他的职业生涯、他们的公众形象、他们的名声就会非常非常的严肃。
If they had Capricorn rising with a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra on the midheaven, you would see a little bit more of the Saturn. You would see a little bit more of the seriousness coming through in terms of their personality, because they've got a Saturn sign, see Capricorn, on the ascendant.
如果这个人上升是摩羯的话呢，你就会看到他们的脸上的表情会更严肃，因为这是摩羯座的。
Now you haven't asked the question, what if Saturn and Jupiter were conjunct the IC?
你们还没有问，如果木土合相在下中天会是如何？
In such a case, home life, family life, very, very important.
那如果这样的话呢，那家庭生活就是对他来说非常非常重要。
This is what the fourth house is all about.
这就是四宫的含义。
And it would still be trying to manage. Remember, the word manage is a very good Saturn word. So they're trying to manage their family.
他们想要去管理他们的家庭，管理是一个非常土星的词汇。
Trying to keep everyone in their family happy.
他们试图想要让家里的所有人都开心。
Maybe it's a big family, Jupiter, but they're very serious about trying to keep them all happy.
也许这是一个大家庭，因为木星在那里。但是在这个人呢，希望就是非常非常的认真的想让所有人都开心。
Okay. So now I'm good. Okay, great. Okay. All right, good. Now, let me say one more thing. When you're thinking about the aspects, you have to think about the influence of the planet if it makes a contact with that point. Notice when we were talking about Jupiter and Saturn conjunct the ascendant, that I gave you the example of my own life, where Saturn is square my ascendant and Jupiter is sextile my ascendant.
当你谈论这个合相的时候，你要看这个合相和它一些重要的点位有没有形成相位，主要的相位。比如说，像我跟大家谈的时候，我举我的例子，我的木星是6分了上升，而土星是4分上升。
We know that therefore Saturn and Jupiter has had an influence on my development, on my personality.
那
Just
么
like
这样的话
it would with the conjunction.
我们就知道呢，这个木土合相对我的成长它有比较大的影响。
So you would still have to consider a planet when it's making a trine, a sextile, a square to the ascendant or midheaven. You still have to consider what does that energy mean, see?
所以说，当一个行星它是4分、6分、3分中上升点的时候呢，你需要去想一下这个行星的含义。
Okay. The difference is the square is more pressure.
不同之处是4分相的压力更大。
And Saturn always is about some pressure. Pressure is duty, responsibility.
土星总是和压力联系在一起，它就和压力、责任、你的义务。
So a square with Saturn is double the pressure.
所以说，如果土星和上升点四分相的话呢，它等于是有双倍的压力，这个人身上承受的。
All right. Now, this was a very interesting question about beliefs and astrology. You want to read the first part of that?
OK， 下面一个问题是一个很有趣的问题，这是关于占星和信仰的，就是大卫是会不会谈谈占星和信仰呢的相关性呢？我发现很多学习占星的人信仰多样化，有信佛的，有信基督教的。大卫本人有什么样的信仰？但来访者不同的信仰怎么处理呢？ I did also.
Good. I figured you did. Thank you. My answer is pretty simple. I have clients who are Christians, clients who are Buddhist, clients who are Jewish, clients who are Muslims, clients who are atheist.
那我有各种各样信仰的客户，有佛教徒、基督教徒、犹太教徒，还有
Also and Hindus.
印度教徒。
Mm-hmm. And so the astrology that I practice is not an astrology that is partial to any religion.
那我所从事的占星学，不是任何宗教的一部分。
Which, in that sense, we're talking about an astrology that is secular.
那么在这个意义上呢，我们说的是它是一个世俗的占星学，它不从属于任何宗教。
But if you're asking me about what belief do I have, because you're saying what belief does David have? My first statement is I don't belong to any religion.
那么如果是你问我到底有什么样的宗教信仰，那么我第一点我是想说我不属于任何宗教。
I don't want any religion to interfere with a spiritual experience.
我不希望在我的灵性的经验中有任何宗教它会干涉我的灵性体验。
Because I have been on a spiritual path very consciously since I was about probably 6 or 7 years old, consciously.
因为我从6、7岁起就会非常有意识的开始这样的灵性的这样的体验。
And I believe we can learn something from every religion.
我相信我们可以从任何一种宗教中学到东西。
I was brought up in a Christian family, and I was the most devout Christian when I was a young boy.
那么我的家庭从小是信仰基督教的，那么我当时是我家人中最虔诚的一个。
By the time I was 13 or 14 years old, I was agnostic, which is kind of a optimistic atheist.
那么当我13、14岁的时候呢，我就成了无神论者。
Then I studied all of the Vedic writings from India in my teens.
然后我在10多岁的时候，我就学了很多印度教的这样一些经典。
Explored Eastern philosophy.
我探索了一些东方哲学。
Buddhism.
还有佛教。
And then Lao Tzu.
然后老子。
And by the time I was 19 years old, especially 18, I would say, the writings of Lao Tzu, The Way of Life, had more impact on me than anything I had read.
当我18、19岁的时候呢，老子的《道德经》比我过去所读的任何东西都更深的影响了我。
So I have continued to carry with me an old tattered version of Lao Tzu since I was about 19.
所以说，从我19岁开始，我就开始一直带着我那本非常旧的老子。
I keep 2 copies of this. I have one in, you can see it's all torn. I have one in China on my desk or behind my desk, and then I have another one here.
你看到这2本都是破的，那么我有2本，一本是在北京的办公室，一本是在这家里。
So that's my background.
那这就是我的背景。
Okay. All right. And so it doesn't matter to me what my customers' belief is. I'm just trying to help them to help themselves.
那么所以说我不管我的客户他们的信仰是什么，我只不过是帮助他们来帮助他们。
I'm interested, as all of us are, in the personal growth, personal development of my client and their fulfillment. That's what interests me.
让我感兴趣的是我客户的个人成长，还有他们的个人的成就感，这是让我感兴趣的。
Okay. All right. Thank you for your questions. Now we're going to go to the lesson.
现在我们开始讲下一节课。
Okay. I think it's very important at this stage in our study that we take a look at some of the basic rules for chart analysis that you will run into.
那么我觉得在我们到了这一阶段的学习，我们在星图分析上面有一些基本的原则，这是非常重要的，我们需要来看一看。
All of you are familiar with the term the ruler of a house.
你们所有人可能都非常熟悉公主星这个概念。
This is the old classical term for the whole rulership concept for signs, planets, houses.
这是一个这是一个古典概念，对于星座、宫位它的统治者这个公主星，这是一个古典概念。
We all know that Mars is Aries and the first house.
我们都知道
in the natural zodiac.
是和白羊座1宫联系在一起的。
I prefer the term associate planet rather than ruler.
我更喜欢关联行星这个词，而不是公主星。
Because we associate it with this point. We associate these things together.
因为我们是把这些不同的事物关联在一起。
Perhaps the term ruler was more appropriate in the Middle Ages or in the time of the Romans.
这个统治者这个词呢，在中世纪比较合适。
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at some of these basic rules.
我们看一看这些基本的原则。
This first one is very important. The houses always keep their essential meanings.
第一个非常的重要，宫位总是始终遵循其核心意涵。
This means that the 8th house is always about partners' money, inheritance, insurance, intimacy issues, trust issues, death and dying. Always.
那么，比如第8宫，它总是和伴侣的钱、遗产、保险、亲密关系这些、死亡、性这些联系在一起，总是如此。
The 4th house is always about home, family, environment.
第4宫总是和家人、家庭环境联系在一起。
This never changes.
这个绝不会变化。
Okay. Now, the planets, here's the second point. The planets, or points contained in a house, have priority over the associate planet. What does that mean?
第2个原则， 宫位中的行星或者关键点的优先级总是高于关联行星。这以后我就把公主星全都翻译成关联行星了哈，大家。
Well, we are going to explore each one of these tonight. But the second one is pretty simple. It means that if you have a planet, sun, moon, or the nodes in a house, that's more important, has more priority than the planet associated with that house, or in the old term would be the ruler of that cusp.
那么
More important.
第二点的意思就是说，当一个宫位里面落有太阳、月亮焦点等等这些行星的时候，这些行星总是比这个宫位所关联的行星更为重要，也就是在古典时候，就是公主星比公主星更为重要。
For example, if you have Mars in the 12th house, that is more important than the sign on that house cusp.
比如说，如果你的火星落在12宫，那么它总是比落在这个宫头线上的星座更为重要。
Now let's keep going. Number 3, third point. The sign on the house cusp will indicate how the essential meaning of the house is expressed.
那么第三一点就是落在宫头的星座显示出宫位的核心意涵将如何表达出来。
It's pretty simple. If you have Sagittarius on the 8th house cusp, that means that freedom for you is one of the keys to intimacy.
那么比如说你的8宫的宫头星座是射手座，那么就意味着自由对你来说是亲密关系的关键所在。
Lorena wants to know, what is the points? Points refers to something that's not a planet, like the lunar nodes, for example.
那么我们这里面指的这个点位，这个点关键点就是像月亮焦点这样的点。
Or the part of fortune. These are not planets.
或者是浮点，这些都不是行星。
Okay. All right. Okay. We're gonna go through examples of each one of these tonight.
一会儿我们会每一个原则我们都会给一个例子。
Here's another very big point I want to make. An intercepted sign will also express itself in the house.
另外一个也是非常重要的，就是被劫夺的星座同样会在宫位中表现自己。
A lot of some astrologers have said, "Oh no, when a sign is intercepted, it's swallowed up and cannot be expressed."
那么有一些占星师他们说，如果一个星座被劫夺，它就被吞噬了，它不能表达它自己。
It's not true.
这不是真的。
And this is magnified. In other words, if you have an intercepted sign in a house and there's a planet or 2 planets even intercepted in that sign, this even more so is going to express that sign.
那么特别是当有行星落在被劫夺星座的时候，它就会更突出的表达出那个星座的特质。
Okay. Here's the next point. The sign of the associate planet does provide additional information about the meaning of the house.
关联行星所落的星座为宫位的，就是为它所守护的那个宫位的含义添加额外的信息。
For example, suppose you had the sign Libra on the midheaven, but you had Venus in Scorpio.
我们举个例子， 比如说你的中天的所落星座是天秤座，但是金星落在了天蝎座。
Well, Libra on the midheaven tells you that cooperation, building relationships, is very important to this individual's success in their career.
那么这个人他的中天落在天秤座，意味着建立关系对这个人的职业是非常非常重要的，职业成功而言。
But because this individual has Venus in Scorpio, this gives you additional information about some trust issues they may have about people.
那么但是如果这个人的金星落在天蝎座的话呢，那么他们可能对于人之间的人际关系有信任的议题。
And therefore, this individual wants to test others to some extent because they have Venus in Scorpio. They want to know, whom can I trust and who is trying to control or manipulate the situation.
因为他们的金星落在天蝎座，所以说他们会想，我能信任谁，或者是谁在操纵，或者在操控这个关系，这个情境。
Mm-hmm. Scorpio is concerned about power, about control.
天蝎座他们非常在意权力，在意控制。
And so because the planet that is the associate planet for that house is in a different sign, which is very common, you get more information about how that expresses itself, what that means.
因为这个关联行星的经常是落在另外一个星座，所以说呢，你就会有了更额外的一些信息，这个到底意味着什么？
Now this last one is very important. I want to get to it, and then I'll answer Wei Jun's question. Okay?
OK。那么最后一个问题非常重要，我先把这个问题讲了，然后再来魏军的问题，我再来回答。
Aspects to the associate planet also provides additional information about the meaning of the house.
关联行星的相位也为它所守护的宫位的含义增添额外的信息。
This one is very, very important.
这一个非常非常的重要。
Suppose, for example, you have Leo. Let me put it this way. Suppose, for example, you have the sign Leo on the ascendant. Let's just say Leo rising.
我们假设，比方说你的上升是狮子座。
And suppose the sun in the chart is square Uranus.
假设，那么你星图中的太阳四分了天王星。
This means the associate planet of the ascendant is square Uranus.
这意味着上升星座的关联行星四分了天王星。
Will that show up in the personality and behavior of the individual?
这会在这个人的个性或者是行为上表现出来吗？
Yes, absolutely.
是的，当然。
Such an individual would show more of an urge to take risk and to be impulsive than would be normal or usual for Leo rising.
那么这样一个人，他就会更表现出比一般上升狮子的人更表现出来他们的冲动、渴望冒险的这样的个性。
And such a person might be more rebellious, more
那这个
contrary.
人也会更加的反叛，更加的反常。
Okay. All right. Now we have a question from Wei Jun. What is this question here?
If the associate planet is outer planets, we will still consider the outer planets, the sign the outer planets.
That's a great question. That's such a good question. I got to give a red star for that question.
Okay. 魏军问的这个问题，如果关联行星是外行星的话，那么外行星落的星座也有一样的作用吗？
Okay. I would say less so. This is where interpretation is an art. But I would say when it's an outer planet, because it's generational, that the sign of the planet has a little less meaning, even though the sign, in this case, the sign has less meaning. Yes.
那么如果是关联行星是外行星的话，那么这个外行星所落的星座呢就没有那么大的意义了。
It's very good.
非常好。
In many ways, I have seen, and we'll see an example of this tonight, that the aspect is oftentimes even more important, meaning the aspect to the associate planet, than the sign of the associate planet.
那么在这种情况下，和关联行星所成的相位呢，比关联行星所落的星座常常更为重要。
Okay.
What about the houses? What about the houses that the associated planet falls in?
It has, some meaning, but the problem is then you can't, you don't want to get too far out in terms of meaning, or you lose some of the, it's down the list in priorities. In other words, I would say it's on the list, but if we're looking at this list and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that would be number 7, but way down the list in consideration.
那么是有一些意义的，但是呢，你就是说这个意义呢，就是它远远的优先级不如我们刚才说的这几个优先级重要。如果我要把它放的话，可能就把它放第7个了，这前面已经有6个了，就是你不能去跑得太远。
In fact, I would tend to say that this last one should probably be before this one. I think the aspects are a little bit more. So in terms of priority, I would say on this list of 6, the aspect should be number 5. Aspects to the associate planet.
甚至说这个关联行星的相位会比关联行星所落的星座更为重要。我们要把这个第6个排到第5个前面去。
Olivia wants to know why are some signs intercepted?
为什么有些星座、有些星图有劫夺星座呢？
And this is because of the Earth's tilt and the fact that, and the further north you get, or the further south towards the South Pole, in other words, as you approach the North Pole or the South Pole, the house systems break down altogether.
这是因为地球有倾斜角的缘故。那么，当你更靠近南极或者更靠近北极，宫位制就垮掉了。
And the way I compensate for this physical fact is to use the Koch house system for most of us, but for those who are born closer to the Arctic Circle in Iceland, northern parts of Scandinavia and Russia, etc., I'll use an equal house system.
那么补救这一点呢，就是虽然说我平时我用的是 Koch 宫位制，但是如果对于冰岛啊，或者是斯堪的纳维亚它的北部呢，或者是俄罗斯的北部，那我就会用等宫制。
Human beings evolved in tropical, subtropical, and temperate zones.
那么人类呢是在热带、亚热带还有温带这个进化的，在这些地区进化的。
And the Koch house system or the Placidus house system, either one, both cover adequately those zones.
那么 Koch 宫位制和 Placidus 宫位制呢，在这些地区是非常准确的。
But they do not cover the Arctic zones well at all. Anything above 51 degrees, 55 degrees, I would say, 55 north, 55 south,
在
these
是
house
在
systems become less
在
reliable.
南纬或者北纬55度以外呢，就任何宫位制它都运作的不好了。
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Some people ask what they don't understand in intercepted sign.
What do you mean?
They don't know.
Oh,
it.
they don't know what it is. All right, let's take a look at some. Let's look at some charts.
我们看一看那个星图，我们就知道什么叫做被劫夺的星座了。
I'm going to go right to some interceptions here. All right, here we go. Here's one. In this chart, we have the sign Aries and the sign Libra intercepted. It means the sign does not fall on either cusp.
那么你比如说在这个图上，白羊座和天秤座就被劫夺了，因为任何的宫头线都不落在他们两个星座上。
Mm-hmm. And this is, by the way, this happens to be the Koch system, which is the one I use. When I first started off in astrology, Koch, which I'm told in German is pronounced Koch houses. But when I first got into astrology, for the first 4 years, I used the Placidus houses.
那么这个 Koch 宫位制呢，是一个德国人他所做出来的。那么在我学占星的前4年，我用的是普拉西德宫位制。
Right, and then in 1974, my advanced teacher talked me into using the Koch houses, and I've just been using them ever since.
那1974年，我当时的进阶老师他推荐我用 Koch 宫位制，那我从那以后就开始用 Koch 了。
And you know, keep in mind, there's over a dozen house systems, over a dozen.
那么其实有10多种不同的宫位制。
And they're all different ways of dividing the celestial sphere.
那实际上都是在划分天球的不同的
I
方
want
式。
to see if you can see something. I don't know if this will show up. Can you see this on there?
Yes， 就大家可以看 ，You can move it far from the screen. It's more clear.
How about this?
Yeah.
Okay. You see, this is what's called a celestial sphere.
你看，这就是天球，
You see, that's the Earth in the middle.
中间的那个是地球。
And of course, you see, if I hold this correctly, it shows the Earth's tilt.
你看这个地球呢，你可以看到那个地轴。
And this area all around, and here's if I turn this, you can see this is actually the sun, and the Earth actually goes around the sun, we know, but this model, this is an astronomical model, but it is a geocentric model.
那么，你看这里面，你看到它实际上是太阳系的9大行星都在里面的，太阳系的行星都在里面的，所以说。
But it's what astronomers call the celestial sphere.
虽然说这是一个天文用的这样一个东西，但实际上呢，它这个模型呢是以地球为中心的。这天文学家是比较的就。
Right, and the celestial sphere just means the sky around the Earth. This is my granddaughter saying goodbye to me. Let me say goodbye to her.
这个天
This
球
is
呢。
Ella. This is my granddaughter Ella.
这是他的孙女在跟他说再见。
Bye-bye. Okay, I'll be talking with you soon. I'll look for you on Skype, and if you're with your dad in here for the next week, I'll see you.
Okay. I may or may not. I may just have dinner date.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll see what I can work out with him about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll ask my mom if I can have a snack next week.
Okay. All right. All right. You have a great trip in Germany and Italy. Okay. Bye-bye. All right. Oops, let me close this. Okay. Thank you. So, the point I'm making is that when you look at a chart wheel, you are looking at this sphere, this celestial sphere, represented in a simple way on one page.
所以说，我的意思是，当你们看星图看星图的时候呢，实际上你们看到的是这个天球，但是把这个天球投影在这个平面上了。
Right? So that's what you're looking at. You're looking at this celestial sphere flattened out on a page.
实际上你们看这个星图的时候，你们看到的是刚才我给你们展示的这个天球。
Okay. And what happens is when you go north or south of the poles, because the Earth is tilted, you get a distortion of the house systems. And it creates this kind of it creates this kind of phenomena we call interception.
当你往南极或者北极走的时候呢，这个星宫位呢就会被扭曲，因此呢，这宫位制就崩解了。
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's what interceptions are. Okay.
这就是劫夺的意思。
Okay. Were there any other questions that came up while I was explaining that?
Someone asked about what about intercepted houses? For example, in this chart, 4th house and 8th house are intercepted.
Right. That's what we're talking about.
Houses.
So what do you mean?
Houses, not intercepted sign.
4th house and 8th house? You mean 4th house and 10th house?
Yeah, 4th house and 10th house, right.
Or in this case, 4th house and 5th house, and 10th house and 11th house. You mean it that way?
Mm-hmm.
All right, call me. Right? All that means, sure. For example, we have Sagittarius on the 11th and Sagittarius on the midheaven.
比如说，在这个射手座在10宫和11宫的宫头都是射手座。
Mm-hmm. And Gemini here and Gemini here.
还有是双子座，4宫和5宫都是宫头都是双子座。
Now notice the latitude. This person was born in Warsaw, Poland. And they're just 3 degrees below that 55. I mean, the Arctic Circle is 60. But we're talking, again, a further north latitude. I would still use the Koch houses here, but they're getting into that zone. Once they hit 55 or north of 55, I start thinking about should I use Koch or equal?
那么你看这个人他是生在波兰华沙，所以说他的纬度呢是大概52度。如果是他们出生的纬度在55度以上的话，我就开始会想了，我是不是到底应该不应该去用本宫制？
Mm-hmm. I mean, this one's 52, so it's fine, really. But the meaning of it's pretty simple. This means that Jupiter is a factor in both their career and in their associations and groups.
那么在这个是很简单，也就是说木星和他们的职业，还有他们的团体都会有关系。
And here, communication, intellectual discussions, curiosity, all the things we associate with Gemini are part of family life, but also part of play and creativity.
那么在下面呢，所有双子座的这些特征都和家庭生活还有他的娱乐生活联系在一起。
By the way, we'll come back to this chart. This is the chart of Marie Curie. the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in Science, who won 2 Nobel Prizes in Science.
另外呢，我们等一会儿我们会再来看这个星图，这是玛丽居里夫人的星图，她获得过2次诺贝尔奖。
Okay. All right. So let's go.
How do you choose house system?
How did I choose? Well, I'm a Libra. I chose to cooperate with my teacher.
老师说我是一个天秤座，所以说我选择和我老师保持一致。
You have to decide which house system you think is the one that works. All I can tell you, and we'll talk about this a little bit more here. I can tell you that I definitely have tested in my own practice the Koch house system, and it seems to work terrific for all latitudes that are either below 55 north, or above 55 south. Seems to work great.
那你得去自己选择哪个宫位制对你更好用。不过我是肯定用 Koch， 我曾经试过。那么 Koch 宫位制在55度以下都用得很好。
So that's my experience. If you think the Placidus house system works better, use that. Or if you want Campanus or Regiomontanus or whatever, use it. You've got many to choose from. Here's what's interesting. The Koch houses and the Placidus houses agree on the ascendant and the midheaven.
那么你自己去选吧，有那么多宫位制可选。不过呢 ，Koch 宫位制和 Placid 宫位制，它们2个的上升点和中天的点的度数都是一样的。
In other words, they give you the same angles. They have the same exact angles.
也就是说，这2个的这个4轴是一模一样的，2种宫位制的下面。
The debate with most of the house systems is a debate about what is called, I don't know if you can translate this, the trisection of the diurnal arc.
那么对于这个关于用哪种宫位制，他们的这个争论呢，就是说在这个怎么把这个4轴中间再分等份，怎么分？
Which means how to divide this section into 3. That's the mathematical debate.
也就是说，怎么把中天和上升之点中间的这个区域分成3份儿，这个是一个数学上的争论。
Okay, so, and it's complicated.
而且这个是很复杂的。
We could spend easily 2 hours just on the mathematics about that.
我们就是说很容易，我们只是解释一下数学原理，我们就很容易的就能花2个小时来解读一下数学原理。
Now, in the COAC course that starts in late September of this year, in the COAC course, we are going to go into detail about chart calculation and houses, and you would learn a lot more about houses and calculation in that course.
在高阶上面，我们会讲到星图计算，还有宫位制，还有Koch 宫位制。那时候你们会学到更多。
Okay.
Can you give an example about associated planets forcing a house?
What do you mean?
Associated planets forcing houses. You say that's not important. It's on the list, very down to the priority. But one student wants to know.
I would rather not right now, because I want to go through. I've got 6 examples, and I've got less than an hour to go through them, and I want to go through them right now.
Okay.
So I'm going to.
Okay.
If I can get to it at the end, I will. But it ain't damn important. Okay.
就是说关联行星所落宫位老实说，今天我们要讲6个例子，我希望先能把这个六个例子讲完，因为这是最重要的。如果有时间的话，现在就不想讲了。
Here's a chart.
那么这个星图先来看，
There are no interceptions.
这里面没有劫夺。
Here we're talking about just simple chart associations. For example, the sign Pisces is on the 6th house cusp, isn't it?
那么这里面我们就讲简单的行星关联，比如说在6宫宫头是双鱼座。
All right. And we have a lot of Pisces in this chart. You can tell that by looking at it.
那么这个人的星图上有非常多的双鱼座的元素。
Some of this Pisces is expressed in the 5th house, isn't it? And some of it is expressed in the 6th.
那么有些双鱼的能量是在5宫表达出来，有的是在6宫。
However, the associate planet for the 6th house is Neptune.
不过呢，6宫关联的行星是海王星。
Okay. Neptune is in Aquarius, so that's a generational sign. Everybody born for a period of 13 years had Neptune in Aquarius.
那么海王星呢，是一个世代的都落在，就是这是任何那年代的人，海王星都落在水瓶座，就是世代。
But it does have some meaning.
不过呢，这也还是有一点点意义的。
Aquarius is concerned with humanitarian.
海王星落在水瓶座呢，海王星会对人道主义的这些事业感兴趣。
And we notice that there is a very pronounced opposition between Haiwanxing and Tuxing.
而且大家也会看到，这个海王星和土星形成一个非常非常明显的对分相。
So let's think about this. What does this mean?
所以说，让我们来想一想，这意味着什么？
Okay, Pisces on the 6th house cusp means what?
6宫宫头是双鱼座，它是什么意思呢？
It means that this individual is sensitive, Pisces, to the conditions within which they work. The work environment, they're sensitive about it.
这意味着这个人呢，对他的工作环境非常敏感。
It might, if we just thought about Pisces on the 6th house in general, it might mean that they would be involved in a job or work that expressed Pisces in some way.
那么，如果是我们就这样宽泛一点来想想，双鱼座落在6宫的感觉，也就是说，这个人呢他的工作方面会表达出双鱼座的这样一种特征。
If we could take out all of these Pisces planets and just leave Pisces on the 6th, there's a variety of things that might mean.
如果我们把这些所有落在双鱼座的行星都拿走，只是说6宫宫头是双鱼座，它会有各种各样的含义。
Okay. Pisces, on the most basic level, could mean someone who works as a bartender.
那么，一个双鱼座的人，他可能是一个酒保。
They are dispensing alcohol to people
他们把
at a bar. This
他
is
们在酒
Neptune.
吧里面把酒给分给大家。
However, if they were more educated, this might mean someone who is a pharmacist.
那么，如果这个人呢，他受到了良好的教育呢，也可能意味着这个人是一个药剂师。
In the United States, a pharmacist is someone who dispenses drugs and medicines to people.
那么在美国，药剂师呢是把这个药品是发送给他人的人。
Pisces on the 6 might also represent someone who's a nurse or even a doctor, possibly.
那么双鱼座落在6宫，可能意味着这个人是个护士，甚至是个医生。
Okay. It could be someone who works in some aspect of the healthcare industry.
这个人呢可能会是在健康卫生领域工作，这个行业工作，医疗健康领域。
Pisces on the 6 might also represent someone who works in a creative field.
那么6宫的双鱼座也可能意味着这个人他是在创意领域工作。
In music, film, photography, a variety of areas.
比如说在音乐行业、电影行业、摄影行业，有很多的这样的。
Much will depend upon the influence of the environment and parents in terms of how that Pisces on the 6 will express or manifest in their life.
这个取决于他们的父母的影响，他们成长的环境的影响。那么这个时候双鱼座的这种能量就会有不同的方向在他们的生命中表达出来。
Now, in this case, we have a whole bunch of planets in Pisces, don't we?
那么在这个例子中，这个人双鱼座落了好多颗行星。
So Pisces is what we would call a very pronounced theme in this chart. It is emphasized theme.
所以说呢，这个人的星图上，双鱼座是一个非常非常突出的主题。
But we do get additional information about Pisces on the 6 by now looking at Neptune.
那么不过呢，我们看海王星它的相位呢，我们可以更多的知道6宫双鱼座的一些信息。
Now, this is Neptune in Aquarius, which we talked about as humanitarian. But notice that this opposition between Neptune and Saturn so close, less than 1 degree from exact.
刚才我们已经谈论了海王星落在水瓶座，这是个人道主义者，有人道主义的倾向。那么但是呢，你看这海王星和土星它们的相位非常的紧密，只有1度之差。
What does Saturn and Neptune mean together?
那么海王星和土星它们合在一起是什么意思呢？
Neptune is the dream, the inspiration.
海王星是梦想，是灵感。
Saturn is the commitment.
土星是你的承诺。
So here we are talking about a hard-working dreamer. Hard-working dreamer.
在这里我们所提到的这个人呢，他是一个勤奋工作的梦想家。
So important. So this means this individual is going to be dedicated or challenged to their, I want to say, Felicia, so I want to say dedicated to their ideal. Does that translate?
Yeah.
Dedicated to their ideal.
所以说这个人呢是为理想而奋斗的人。
Okay. Now we don't know what that ideal is going to be.
我们不知道他的理想可能是什么。
But we know that their sense of pressure, wanting to succeed, is very strong. This person feels compelled. They've got Saturn opposite Neptune. They feel compelled to succeed at their dream.
但是因为他有土星和海王星的这么一个紧密的相位，所以这个人呢会感觉到 他情不自禁的一定要去实现他的梦想。
It is important to them.
这对他来说非常非常的重要。
Are they willing to do the work? Are they ambitious?
他们愿意不愿意去做辛勤的工作？他们是不是野心勃勃？
What sign is associated with Saturn?
土星和哪个星座联系在一起呢？
Capricorn.
摩羯座。
Okay. So we see that they have a little bit of ability to be disciplined, to work hard, that supports the Saturn issue, doesn't it?
所以说呢，这个人我们知道他是有能力去努力工作的，这是一个非常重要的土星的议题。
So in this case, the sixth house has more importance because there is such an emphasis in the Neptune theme. Look at all this Pisces, for God's sakes.
所以说这些海王星的都在双鱼座的行星呢非常的重要，因为这都是海王星的这个议题的所在。你看它有这么强的一些土海的对分相。
We know that on the personality plane, this individual is going to come across as a Libra still, despite all that Pisces. They're going to be socially more assertive.
我们知道这个人的上升是天秤座，所以说呢，虽然说他有那么多的双鱼座的行星，但是他看上去呢，在社交上面他是更加主动的那种，很
a people person. Hello, how are you?
他是一个喜欢就是说跟人打交道的人。
Now, this is the chart of one of my granddaughters, not the granddaughter that you just saw, but another granddaughter.
这是我另外一个孙女的星图，不是你们刚才看到那个孙女的星图，是另外一个孙女的星图。
You can tell that she's only 7 years old.
你可以看她现在只有7岁。
She doesn't have a job yet.
她还没工作呢。
Right now, she is off at horse camp.
她现在她去马术俱乐部了，马术夏令营了。
She's been learning to ride horses, and now that she's at a camp, she's riding horses.
那么她一直在学骑马，那么现在呢，她就去那个夏令营了。
We don't know, but here's what we wonder about her career. This would be normal, typical in looking at this chart.
那么我们看看她的职业可能是什么？这是我们一个一般的正常的这个看职业的方式。
Will she go in a direction of compassion and go into the healthcare industry, or will she choose the entertainment industry? Which one will she go into?
那么这个孩子他会去就是选择那个医院啊、医生啊、护士啊这医疗这个行业呢，还是说会去娱乐业呢？他会去哪个行业？
She loves music. She loves dancing. She's very attractive.
他喜欢音乐，他喜欢跳舞，他也很迷人，长得很好看。
She could go in the direction of entertainment.
他可以去娱乐业。
However, the biggest influences are in the health field. Her grandmother is in the health field.
但是更大的这样一个影响是在医疗健康领域，他的祖母是在医疗健康领域。
And her father now works for a company that provides services to the healthcare industry.
那么他的父亲呢，现在也是为一个公司，这个工作，这个公司呢是为医疗健康行业提供服务。
And her mother worked as a personal trainer and had a degree in nutrition, which is also about healthcare.
那么他的母亲呢是一个私人教练，而且他有营养学的学历。
So there are 3 people. I'm getting feedback from your computer. Did you switch something on your computer, Felicia?
No.
All of a sudden, I'm getting an echo.
Do you still have the echo now?
Yeah. Did the door open? Did something happen?
No, nothing changed. All the same.
Okay. Well, I'm getting the echo. I think others are getting it too. We're getting it also. Just start. Nothing's changed here. I mean, nothing's changed. So we'll just work with it. Wow, I don't know. It's very annoying. But anyway, we think because she has the influence of 3 people in the healthcare industry, that she will probably go into the health field.
我觉得呢，我们都觉得，因为他家里的3个人呢都是在医疗健康领域，他受到他们的影响，所以说我们认为他会最后去医疗健康领域。
Her grandmother thinks, and I think this is a possibility, that she will become a veterinarian.
那么他的母亲觉得他会成为一个兽医。
She has great love and compassion for animals.
他特别喜欢动物，他对动物有很多的同情心。Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Did you not hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with the internet. So anyway, this is one example of how this Pisces in an obvious way would express itself in the 6th house, but I wanted to take you through the logic of the associate planet and the aspects to that planet.
那么这就是双鱼座在第6宫的一个表达。不过呢，我希望你们看到就是这个关联行星和关联行星如何表达的这样一个方式，这样的它的逻辑解读的逻辑。
Now, 2 other things to consider here.
另外你还要
Somebody asked, you asked the question, well, what about the house of the associate planet?
那么刚才有人问关联行星所落的宫位怎么解读？
Okay. Neptune is in the 5th house.
海王星是在第5宫。
The 5th house is a house of play.
第5宫是娱乐之宫。
Okay.
玩乐之宫。
And so this is again a marking point to where maybe she will end up in the entertainment industry.
那么这也是个标志，也许他最终到了娱乐业。
Her father, when he was much younger, did work as a model. He was a model, and he also studied some acting and had a brief time in Hollywood. Her father.
他的父亲年轻的时候呢，曾经是个模特，然后也在好莱坞待了很短暂的一段时光。
Both of her parents are very attractive people, and she is very attractive.
他的父母2个人都是很有魅力的人，她也很漂亮。
So in that way, maybe the 5th house position of Neptune supports a little bit the entertainment aspect.
那么如果这样说的话，这个海王星所落的位置呢，可能有一点点支持进入娱乐业的这样一个方向。
And you could also make a case. She's got Cancer on the midheaven. The moon is in the 6th. So here's another example of looking at the moon's house. The moon is the ruler. You can do that, but it's down the list.
另外呢，你看它的中天是巨蟹座，那么月亮落在第6宫，月亮落在白羊座，那么你也可以这样来做。不过呢，这个在优先顺序上面并没有排得那么高。
Okay, so the health field is a possibility with her pretty strongly. But let me tell you what, again, I'm teaching you about houses and associations and how to draw meaning from these associations. This is what I'm teaching you about today.
这就是为什么我刚才说呢，就是中天的这个关联行星落在6宫啊，刚才说这可能是去医疗行业。不过呢，最重要的是我们看这些它的逻辑。
I want you to learn how to make these associations so you can move around the chart and begin to link and combine things that give you meaning, that give you information.
我希望你看到这个关联行星它和星座宫位之间的联系，然后你这样的话就能再看整张星图，这样的这种关联的联系呢，就会给你带来更多的意义。
But I don't want you to lose sight of what has priority.
但是我不希望你们失去，就是到底是哪一点它更有优先度的，不要失去这样的观点。
Aspects to the angles are very important. High priority, remember that.
对四轴形成的相位是非常重要的，这是在优先等级上很高的。
And as is the overall theme of the chart, high priority.
另外就是说整个星图，还有就是整个星图的主题，这也是列在优先等级表上面的。
And in the most general sense, the north node, or the position of the nodes, is high at the top of the list for trying to understand any chart.
那么一般来说，月亮焦点对于想要去理解一个人的星图，占有至关重要的地位。
When we get more into chart interpretation, you're going to see just how important these lunar nodes are.
当我们去学星图解读的时候呢，你们会更清晰的看到月亮焦点有多么的重要。
In this case, we can recognize right away that the North Node in the 6th house in Pisces is more important than anything else.
那么在这个星图上，我们可以一眼就看出来，北焦点在双鱼座6宫，比别的一切都更为重要。
In terms of career.
就职业而言。
Because the 6th house is a job house. And notice, some of you should have noticed this, the midheaven is 16 degrees of Cancer. We have an exact trine between the midheaven and the north node.
另外呢，你要注意到这个北焦点是在双鱼座16度，而中天呢也在16度，它们两个有个非常精准的三合相位。
Okay, that's important.
这是非常非常重要的。
But the purpose of today's class is to teach you how to move around the chart, how to bring in, as you see when we go through some of these other examples, how to bring in these associate planets.
那么我们今天课程的主要目的呢，是看我们在星图上面转一转，看到这个关联行星它的意思，我们怎么样用在解读中。
Okay, here's another chart.
这是另外一个星图。
Here, we're going to talk about planets in a house. This goes back to this issue. The planets or points contained in a house have priority over the associate planet.
这另外一个例子就是说，在一个宫位里面的行星或者是那个点，它会比关联行星更为重要。
Okay? Even though the sign Capricorn is on the descendant, which makes Saturn the associate planet, both Jupiter and the Sun express themselves in the 7th house.
那么虽然这个第7宫它的宫头星座是摩羯座，但是你看这个宫内有太阳和木星，他们是通过摩羯座表达出来。
This individual makes their living as a consultant.
那么这个人呢，他的职业是咨询师。
They are now 78 years old.
那么他现在78岁了。
And they are still working full time as a consultant.
他还在每天都在工作，全天工作。
Expressing the Sun and Jupiter in that consulting role.
那么他是在这个咨询中呢，他表达了太阳和木星的含义。
Right. Now, let's say therefore that the Sun and Jupiter here show this energy, this vitality,
我们说，
such strong vitality.
太木呢，这个合在合相呢，表达出了他的非常很强的有精气神儿，特别有活
We
力。
notice Saturn is the ruler of the 7th,
我们知道土星是
and that
7宫的守护星，
and that Saturn is in Pisces.
而土星又在双鱼座。
We notice that Saturn is in the 10th house and is opposite Neptune.
我们也看到土星是在10宫对向了海王星。
Okay. What kind of consultant is this individual?
这个人是干什么样的咨询行业呢？是在哪个咨询行业呢？
This person is an astrologer,
这个人是一个占星师，
expressing compassion for their clients.
那么他为客户表达他们的同情心。
So they are a hardworking Capricorn. They have great energy late into life.
那么这个人呢是一个摩羯座，他非常努力的工作，他的精力非常旺盛。
Now,
然后
this individual also used to work before they became an astrologer. They worked in the music industry.
那这个人呢最后成了一个占星师，在他成为占星师，他在年纪比较大的时候成为占星师，在他成为占星师之前呢，他一直在音乐行业工作。
And you can see they have Pisces on the midheaven.
你可以看到他的中天是双鱼座，
And Saturn aspecting Neptune. So the ruling planet, or the associate planet of the midheaven is Neptune, and they used to work in the music industry. They were an opera singer.
他是一个歌剧演员。
And the answer is Shuddha. Yes, this is Noel Till.
这就是 Noel Till 的星图。
Okay. I want you to see this. All right. Okay. So they switched from a career in opera to a career as an astrologer, as a consultant.
所以说呢，他从一个歌剧演员转行到了占星师，
Expressing the Sun Jupiter in the 7th, among other things.
他表达出了太木合相在7宫的这样一个工作性质。
Another factor you would want to consider in terms of their work as a counselor is that they have Mercury in the 8th, which is very good for getting into hidden areas.
另外，作为一个占星师呢，他的一个很好的是，他水星落在第8宫，所以说呢，这个可以帮助他进入客户所隐藏的领域。
We're talking about penetrating insight. Penetrating insight.
那么水星在第8宫，我们说它有一针见血的这种洞见。
Notice that Mercury is opposite Pluto very closely.
这个水星和冥王星有非常紧密的对分相。
Okay. All right. What's the question from Maggio?
Why Sun Jupiter conjunction in 7th house is astrologer?
We don't know that it's an astrologer. In fact, if you had met him when he was an opera singer, you would never thought so, probably.
我们并没有说他肯定就是一个占星师。如果是你在他唱歌剧的时候看见他的话，你绝对不会想象他会后来成为占星师。
Could have been a therapist. This is a good chart for a psychologist.
他可能会成为一个咨询师、心理咨询师或者心理学家。
His degree was not in opera. His degree was in psychology, a combination psychology degree from Harvard.
实际上，他在大学拿到的是一个有点像综合心理的这样一个学位。在大学学的。
So he had.
也不是歌剧。
You know. So what the point is that he had a potential to be a consultant, be a therapist, psychologist, etc.
所以说呢，我刚才说的意思是，这个人他有潜能成为一个心理咨询师、心理学家。
So he's had a very interesting career.
他确实有一个非常有趣的职业。
He would have made a really good psychologist, a really good therapist.
他会是一个非常好的心理治疗师。
But he also likes astrology. Some of that might be a little Aquarius, Venus in Aquarius. He is very attracted to astrology, attracted to it.
那金星呢在水瓶座，所以说呢，他也被占星所吸引。
He liked the philosophy of astrology to some extent.
他
the mindset.
从某种程度上，他喜欢占星学的哲学性。
And the question is, why such potential? What is meant by that?
你说有这样的潜能是什么意思？
You mean, could we tell this person was going to go to Harvard? Is that what you're asking me?
你是在问我们能知道这个人能预先知道这个人会去哈佛吗？你是这个意思吗？
What is she?
Potential of therapist.
Oh, just the 7th, 8th house is very strong.
因为他有很强的7、8宫。
The sign Libra, the sign Scorpio, the 7th house and the 8th house are very important for counselors and therapists. You got to be fascinated by people, you got to like people, you got to be interested in people, you got to be willing to get into people's shit, which is certainly what Scorpio is about. So you got to have some kind of 7th house, 8th house.
所以说，要作为一个咨询师呢，你是需要有一些7、8宫的东西的，因为你要进入别人的非常有问题的地方。
Okay. And we do have Mars in Libra. Mars is part of this, so we have again, look at the pressure of this.
那么火星在
Mars, Pluto.
天秤座，那么这个火星也增加了这个格局。你看看它有多少，这个星图上面有多少的压力啊
And this person is driven by the North Node in Sagittarius.
这个人呢，被在 射手座的北焦点所驱动。
All people, everyone, anyone born with the North Node in Sagittarius is driven by a search for the truth.
每个生在北焦点生在射手座的人，他们的驱动力都是由他们想要去寻求真理的这样驱动性所驱动的。
Okay. What is Wang
If there's no planet in 7th house, can we look at the associated planets of these houses to see if this
Sure.
person is suitable of be a therapist?
Yeah, there's all kinds of different combinations for a counselor. And other influences can be Pisces or the 12th house for counselors and therapists. Sometimes the sign Cancer can be nurturing. The sign Sagittarius is a teacher and can sometimes be, so there's a lot of different combinations, but the most,
就是说咨询师的有各种各样的组合。刚才我们讲的是一种组合，你比方双鱼座、射手座、巨蟹座，这都是可能的咨询师的这个组合中所落星座。
Okay, so there's all different kinds of counselors and therapists.
而且有各种各样不同的咨询师。
All different kinds. We don't want to just limit it to one or two signs. This is ridiculous.
我们不能把它只是限制在某样一个星座，这样讲也很荒唐。有各种不同类型的治疗师。
Okay. All right. All right. Let's look at some other charts while we've got time to do so. We've already
我们
looked
再
at
看
this
下
chart.
一张星图。
We looked at this chart already, so let's move to a different one. Oh, this is your teacher's chart. This is my chart.
你看，这是我的星图。
I forgot mine was in here. All right. This is to go to this question. An intercepted sign will also express itself in the house, especially if there are planets in this intercepted sign.
那么这个是下面一个原则，就是一个被劫夺的星座也会表达自己，特别是如果这个被劫夺星座里面若有行星的话。
So let's look at this. We have Leo. Let's start over here. Leo's intercepted. Pluto is in Leo in the 8th house.
我们从这里开始，冥王星被劫夺了，狮座被劫夺了的，而冥王星也在这个被劫夺的星座中。
Does this express itself?
那么这个会表达出来吗？
Okay. I would say my Pluto in the 8th house has expressed itself countless times. Countless times.
那我要说的是，我在被劫夺的这个8公里的冥王星，无数次的表达了自己，表达了出来。
And I'll give you some dramatic examples in a minute, but let's just start with some of the basics.
我等一会儿会给大家一些戏剧化的例子，不过我们先从基础开始吧。
Okay. Pluto is also about resiliency. I think that's a really good keyword.
那么冥王星是和这个人的韧性相关的，和他的
Which means the ability to bounce back from crisis or disaster.
也就是意味着这个人呢可以从危机里东山再起。
Now, you always want to look to see if it's an outer planet. You know this. When you go back to look at your list of priorities, you know that when you're dealing with an outer planet, you want to see, does it aspect a personal planet?
那么如果是我们去看这个外行星的话呢，你非常重要的你要看这个外行星和个人行星有相位吗？
And of course it does. Pluto is the closest aspect to the sun. There is a close sextile within 1 degree or just over 1 degree to the sun.
那么在我的星图上呢，冥王星是和太阳最紧密的一组相位。
Okay, so we have the sextile here. So that means given the opportunity, that's the sextile, given the opportunity, this individual can regenerate their vitality.
那么这意味着，如果你给一个机会的话呢，这个人可以去复原自己的这种活力。
Mm-hmm. Has this individual ever experienced intense confrontation with others?
你们有没有人跟其他人发生过非常激烈的冲突呢？
And the answer is yes.
你觉得这个人会不会跟其他人发生激烈的冲突呢？那么我的回答是的，会的。
Has this individual been able to bounce back from crisis and disaster? The answer is yes.
那这个人呢，从危机和这个困难中有没有能够又东山再起？那么我的回答是的。
Mm-hmm. And has this individual therefore been able to show the ability to bargain or barter in negotiations with others?
那这个人有没有学会在和他人的协商中学会如何谈判、讨价还价呢？是
And
的。
the answer is should.
这个答案还是的。
Mm-hmm. And so, is this Pluto been swallowed up by the 8th house and therefore not expressing itself? No.
那么，难道这个冥王星在八宫被劫夺了，它就不能表达出自己吗？情况其实不是这样的。
Okay. I can tell you this Pluto has expressed itself plenty at times, perhaps too many in my life.
我可以告诉大家的是，这个冥王星在我的人生中多次表达，有的时候可能太多了。
All right. In this case, has the part of fortune expressed itself in Aquarius in the 2nd house?
那么另外呢，在2宫被劫夺的福点有没有表达出自己呢？
Or would you say to this person, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Your part of fortune has been swallowed up by the 2nd house and therefore does not express itself. I'm so sorry."
那你要对这个人说什么呢？你会对他说：“哦，我太抱歉了，你这个福点被劫夺了，因此他不可能表达出来。”
Or have I been fortunate enough to make a good living as an astrologer?
那我作为占星师，我是很好的谋生，为自己谋生。
I have an Aquarian way of making money, a unique, different, original way of making a living.
我有一个水瓶座的模式来赚钱，那么这个就是说，一个不同寻常的方式。
And I've been able to do very well in that field, better than certainly in the top 5% of income earners in astrology in the United States.
那么在这个行业中，我的挣钱能力呢是在前5%的。
Now you could say, well, look, you've got Jupiter in the 2nd house too.
那你可能说，嗨，你看你的木星在第2宫啊。
And I would say my Jupiter does function in the 2nd, but it's also, look how close it is to the 3rd. So it has a 3rd house meaning here too.
所以说， 那个，但是木星呢，你看它是在三宫宫头，所以说这个木星也有三宫的一些表达。
which is teaching, writing, publishing.
这就是教书、写作、出版。
Okay. Now, let's take another example. Somebody would say, well, wait a minute. What about Capricorn on the second house cusp? What about your attitudes and behavior with money? Let's talk about that. Second house.
有人可能是说
Attitudes and behavior with money.
那么有人说，你看你二宫宫头是摩羯座，那么你的对金钱的态度如何呢？
Am I serious about how I manage my finances?
我对管理我自己的财务是不是很认真呢？
Yes.
是的。
Do I keep a detailed accounting of all financial transactions?
我会不会很细心的、很仔细的保留所有的这个经济上面的记录呢？
Do I know to the dollar
我是不
what
是
is
连
in all of my accounts every day?
就是我的账户里面，我可以知道个位数的美元？
Should. Yeah.
是的，
This is Saturn
这就是我的
in
土星，
Virgo
这就是土星处女座的表达，
and Capricorn.
还有二
Do
宫
I
摩
have
羯座。
Do I have a financial plan in place, or have I worked hard, Capricorn, worked hard trying to achieve certain goals financially?
我是不是想要就是说努力工作，在财务上面获得达成一些目标呢？
Should. Yes.
答案
Then
还
you
是
could
是的
say, do I believe or am I optimistic about my financial potential?
那我对我
Or have
自
I
己
been
的，我
in
对
my
我
life?
自己的财务的，就是说挣钱的能力是不是很乐观呢？
And the answer is yes.
那么我的答案是是的。
So both are true. You've got some Capricorn influence here. You got a little Jupiter influence here. You got part of fortune influence here.
所以说我刚才所说的一切都是真的。你有一点摩羯座的影响，你有一点木星的影响，你有一点浮点在对二宫的影响。
What about Aquarius? Have I made contributions? Or have I valued contributions to humanitarian causes or to nonprofit organizations?
What? I'm sorry.
Do I value or have I made contributions, significant contributions to humanitarian causes or nonprofit organizations?
我是不是给那个人道主义组织或者是非营利性组织为他们做出贡献呢？
Have I contributed time, money, and energy, effort to community organizations, community groups?
我有没有把我的这个资源、我的时间都提供到这些社团中去呢？
Yes, of course, should. Yes.
是的，
Yes.
是的。刚才老师都在讲的是木星是水瓶座哈。
Now, here are other things to consider. You could say, well, look, you have Saturn in the 9th, and you make money from teaching, so there's another thing. Again, we got Jupiter here too, so.
另外呢，你也可以说，你看土星是在9宫的，所以说这个人呢可以以老师为职业来谋生。
And you might also say, well, look, Aquarius expresses itself. Look, Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, is in the 7th, and you are a consultant.
那么 这是二宫的水瓶座的个人关联行星天王星落在了第7宫，所以说呢，你可能会想，哎，这个人会不会是一个咨询师呢？
Okay. I'm going to answer Julia's question. She says, why I've got totally opposite manner towards my financial items. Never know how much money I've got in my purse and bank account. Some signs, same signs in Jupiter as well in second house. Where is your Saturn? Tell me where your Saturn is. This is where we'd have to look at your whole chart, unfortunately.
这位同学问，为什么我这个有相同的这个2宫和8宫，为什么我对我的钱包里多少钱，银行里多少钱，我一点都不清楚呢？就在2宫宫头，我有同样的星座，而且是木星也在2宫。老师问你的土星在哪里呢？
In Cancer? Okay, well, there's a reason right there. You know, I would say you just have a feel for how much money you have. You don't really know.
这就是刚才你说的那个问题的答案了，就是土星在巨蟹座，你对于你有多少钱是有个感觉的，虽然说你不知道到底是有多少，没有一个确切的数。
Just a feeling, of course. And the other factor would be Jupiter. Your Jupiter may be more strongly in the second house than mine is. My Jupiter is a little bit leaning towards the third, see?
另外一个影响因素就是木星，那么木星呢，它可能会落在2宫，但是完全落在2宫。我的木星呢是有点是像靠3宫公头了。
Right, and Jupiter is easy come, easy go.
那么木星就是来得快也去得快。
Jupiter's make money, spend money.
木星是赚钱花掉。
Okay, in the second house. Yeah. Okay.
在第2宫。
Okay. All right. And we're at the end of our class, but we'll glance at this last example real quick.
我们已经到结束的时候了，但是我们很快的看一下这个星图吧。
Okay. I thought there was a little bit more on this person, more information, but that's okay. This is a fascinating chart, one of my favorite charts. But let's look at it.
这是一个非常非常迷人的星图，也是我最喜欢的星图之一。我们来看一看吧。
This is where I chose this chart for this reason. I want you to see that the sign of the associate planet can provide additional information about the meaning of the house.
那么我是有特殊的原因选这个星图的，我希望大家看看，就是说关联行星所落的星座和宫位相位呢，是可以为星图解读提供更多的信息。
What happened here? Oh, here we go. This is the same chart. You know what? We're short on time.
Yes, I think
this was supposed to. This thing is pointed wrong. Whoever put this chart in here, this should be pointed at the sun. Don't make this mistake again. This should be pointed at the sun and Saturn, and this is supposed to be pointed at Jupiter. That was the purpose of this being in there. Don't lose these, okay?
等会儿记一下，这个图画错了。You want sun opposite Saturn?
Yes.
Okay.
This was clearly in the original document, okay? This is
在我们
very
的原始材料上面是太阳是土星和木星形成一个 T 三角。
This is the chart. By the way, both of these are the same charts, and I put them in here for a purpose. And this is the chart of the famous film director Frank Capra.
那么这是一个非常著名的电影导演 Frank Capra 的星图，这两张图是一样的。
Frank Capra was the most successful film director of the 1930s in the United States. Amazing film director.
Frank Capra 这个人呢，
Okay.
是在美国上世纪30年代1930年期间是最著名的导演。
Now, and here's where this is why the reason I chose this is I want to just cut to the basic reason why I chose him twice. If you look at the sun in Taurus as the associate planet for his sixth house, he's got Leo on the sixth. You might think just by that alone that he was a reliable, not inclined to change jobs, etc.
如果是你仅看那个六宫宫头关联的行星所落的星座，比方说这六宫的关联行星太阳落在了金牛座，你可能会认为这个人呢是喜欢这种稳定的工作，从来没想过换工作。
But I want you to look at his job record. Okay? Here are all the jobs he had in his life: selling newspapers, music combo, college laundry, soldier in World War I, film extra, manual laborer, ditch digger, tree pruner, private tutor, scriptwriter, bookseller, door-to-door salesman, film editor, film lab assistant, comedy writer, screenwriter, and film director. Read those out, Felicia.
OK， 那你看这个人他干过什么工作哈？他曾经卖过报纸，而且在10多岁的时候，music combo.
Music combo, so like a group, like the Beatles or something, a group.
他曾经在乐队，然后呢，他在大学是做干洗，还在去了军队。 然后他还做过手工艺者，还在电影行业做过。他曾经做过修剪树木的、挖沟的，私人教师、剧本作者、图书销售等等，这些刚才所说的这一切都是他曾经做过的工作。还有电影导演，还有做过那个胶片 ，excuse me， OK， 还做过喜剧作家、剧作家等等。Film lab assistant. What is film lab?
That's where they process film.
OK， 就是说电影编辑的助理。
We got it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so let's think about it.
电影剪辑师
Look at this Uranus Saturn, exactly 27 degrees opposite his sun.
你看看这个土天的合相，非常紧密的合相对冲太阳。
Now, you could say, well, yeah, look, this guy's got Jupiter in the sixth house, so he had a lot of jobs.
所以你可能说，你看这个人木星在6宫，所以他做过很多工作。
But Jupiter is part of this whole sun configuration. It's the sun opposite Saturn, Uranus, square Jupiter.
但是木星呢是这样一个太土天这个相位的这个一个组成部分。
And we can also see that he was very hardworking. This guy worked all the damn time. Hard worker, Sun Saturn.
我们知道这个人呢，他是非常非常努力工作的人，他几乎是一直都在工作。这是个太土天的人。
He was reliable. He was durable. You could count on him. He was a Taurus. He was a Taurus.
他是个金牛座，而且有这个太土对分相，他非常的可靠。 非常的有耐力。
He also was unusual and different and experimented with many different lines of work to make money.
然后呢，他这个又有跟天王星的这个相位，所以说他是与众不同的。他喜欢去做实验，所以说他自己实验了各种各样的工作。
Okay. Now, my guess is, by the way, that his birth time was probably a little earlier. You see this 2 a.m.? This 2 a.m. is just the best they could come up with for when he was born in Italy. This is from his birth certificate, but it's probably a little earlier.
我觉得他出生时间还会更早一些。虽然说这个出生时间是他在意大利出生的时候出生证上的时间。
I definitely think he's a Pisces rising, but my guess is he was born a little earlier and has Neptune more closely on the IC with the moon closer to the midheaven, I would guess.
他肯定是个双鱼座，不过我觉得呢，他的海王星可能离下中天更近一些，然后月亮离中天也更近一些。
But here's the point I want to make. All of these things are expressed here. The sun in Taurus, the opposition to Saturn, the opposition to Uranus, and the square to Jupiter are all expressed in this person's life.
那我想说的是，这个人的太阳在金牛座，对分土星，对分天王星，四分木星，所有这一切都在他的人生中反映了出来，表现了出来。
And by the way, this guy lived a long time. He lived to be like 93.
另外说一下，这个人他很长寿，他活到了93岁。
Okay. And he was a 3-time Academy Award winner as a director. 3 times.
他曾经获得3次奥斯卡最佳导演奖。
And I'm going to leave you with this, and then we're going to stop. Look at this. Look at this last sentence. This is very important. Under Capra's direction, think Leo direction. Leo on the 6th house. Ultimately, he was in charge. He was the director.
另外，你看这个，是坐在6宫，所以说呢，一切都他说了算，他是个导演。
Okay, so that's direction.
他是主事的人。
Film crews, that 6th house.
啊？
The crew, film crew, 6th house. See?
就是他有一个电影班子，这个是第6宫。
He became known for innovation. What is that? Uranus.
他因为他的创新能力而知名，这是革新能力而知名，这是天王星的能量表达。
He became known, his crews were known for reliability. This is Taurus.
而且他的团队以他们的可靠性而知名，这是金牛座。
Quality work is Taurus.
而且是非常非常有质量的工作，这也是金牛座。
Time and money saving techniques is Taurus, and also a little bit of Saturn.
另外呢，他还有非常省时省钱的技术。那么这是金牛座，也是还有一点点土星的意味。
Expertise and craftsmanship. This is a little bit of the Jupiter in Virgo, but also the strong Saturn.
另外他们是有专业的能力，这是有点点木星在处女座。那么另外呢，还有很多的土星的影响。
Now, June will have to send their question in. We don't have time to answer that tonight.
我们今晚没有时间回答你的问题了，你可以把这个问题发过来。
I do want to tell you about something. You know, a lot of times on No Door, for some time now, we have been offering and selling our new moon reports.
那么另外呢
Well,
Okay, you can go ahead.
But this Saturday, is it this Saturday, Felicia? Or is it Friday?
Friday night.
Friday. This Friday night, I wish I was going to be there. But this Friday night, we are doing something really special for the new moon, and I want Felicia to tell you about it real quickly. Will you mention this, Felicia?
Okay.
Because I wish I was there for it. But these new moon meditations and new moon prayers are I think very helpful, very practical, very useful.
那么我们一直是都在提供那个新月的报告。那么这个周五呢，我们特地邀请了思成老师来给我们带领一场新月的静心的这样一个活动，欢迎大家来参加。大卫说呢，他刚才也说，他说新月是非常非常重要的，如果他在北京的话呢，他也一定会参加。
Okay.
所以就是大家有在北京的同学呢，欢迎来我们参加这个活动。思成老师是在这方面是非常有经验的老师。
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So that's it.
Okay.
This has been fun. I could talk about this for another hour, but I can't.
周五晚上7点半开始，周五晚上7点半到9点半。
Yes.
跟我们
Okay.
网上讲。
All right. So this has been an important class. I hope you practice all of this. Okay.
这是很重要的这堂课讲的，希望大家能够下去练习。
Great. All right. Have fun on. All of you have fun on Friday night too.
希望大家周五玩的开心。Okay. Bye.
That's you. That means you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
再见。再见。Bye bye.